In the 1990s, as Boeing celebrated its absolute dominance over commercial aviation, a team of engineers in Everett, Washington, proposed something radical. They called it the Sonic Cruiser, an aircraft designed to fly at Mach 0.98, just below the speed of sound, covering transatlantic routes 15 to 20% faster than anything in the sky. The concept was striking. A delta wing configuration, composite fuselage, and canard foreplanes that looked like something from a military hangar, not a passenger terminal. Airlines expressed intense interest. Boeing committed significant R&D resources. The project represented the future of flight, proof that Boeing could still lead through engineering audacity rather than incremental refinement. Then, the world changed. Fuel prices spiked. Airlines demanded efficiency over speed. Boeing shelved the Sonic Cruiser in 2002 and redirected its technology into what became the 787 Dreamliner, an aircraft optimized for fuel burn rather than velocity. For over 2 decades since, the aviation industry has accepted a painful truth. Boeing innovates reactively, not proactively. The company that wants to find commercial aviation through clean sheet engineering ambition, from the 707 to the 747 to the 777, has not launched a truly new commercial aircraft program since the 787 in 2004. Now, in 2026, Boeing's board reportedly faces the single most consequential product decision in the company's 109-year history: whether to launch a mid-market aircraft, widely referred to as the 797, or a clean sheet replacement for the 737, or some hybrid of both. But here's what makes no sense. Boeing carries approximately $54 billion in total debt. The company posted an $11.8 billion net loss in 2024, a $2.2 billion profit in 2025. The 737 MAX still faces production caps from the FAA. The 777X is years behind schedule. CEO Kelly Ottberg has publicly stated that Boeing is not ready to launch anything new. Yet, every airline executive, every engine manufacturer, and every Airbus strategist is watching this decision with intense focus. So, how can a company that has had a lot of issues on its hands define the next 30 years of aviation? To understand why the 797 decision carries such extraordinary weight, we need to understand why this gap in the market was allowed to form in the first place. Boeing discontinued the 757 in 2004. The aircraft had been a workhorse, seating roughly 200 passengers with a range of approximately 3,400 to 3,900 nautical miles, perfectly suited for transatlantic routes and long domestic sectors. The 767, its wider cousin, served similar markets with more capacity. Together, they dominated what the industry calls the middle of the market, routes too long or too busy for a standard narrowbody, like the 737, but not large enough to justify a widebody, like the 787 or A330. When Boeing retired the 757, the assumption was straightforward. The 737 family would stretch upward, the 787 would reach downward. The gap would close naturally. It didn't. The physics were unforgiving. The 737 derivative could add seats, but couldn't meaningfully add range without fundamental airframe redesign. The 787, while efficient, carried too many seats at too high an operating cost for thinner routes. Aircraft that could reach transatlantic distances couldn't do it economically with 220 passengers. Aircraft that could carry 220 passengers economically couldn't reach transatlantic distances. The trade-off seemed permanent. Airlines adapted. They stretched the aging 757 fleet far beyond original expectations. They deployed A321neos on routes that really needed more range. They accepted sub-optimal economics because no manufacturer offered the right tool. Delta Airlines alone operates more than 140 Boeing 757s and 767s that need replacement within the next decade. United Airlines faces a similar fleet transition. These aren't abstract market projections, they're concrete fleet decisions that airlines need to make within the next 5 years. And Boeing has nothing to sell into it. Then, on October 30th, 2024, something happened that fundamentally altered Boeing's competitive position. Iberia took delivery of the first Airbus A321 XLR, a variant of the A320neo family, with a range of 4,700 nautical miles, enough to cross the Atlantic with single-aisle economics. Within weeks, Iberia operated the aircraft's first transatlantic commercial flight from Madrid to Boston on November 14th. The A321 XLR didn't just enter service, it validated an entire strategy. Airlines had already ordered over 500 of them. American Airlines, United Airlines, Aer Lingus, Iberia, and others all placed orders. But the A321 XLR has limitations, and they reveal exactly why the 797 concept refuses to die. The A321 XLR, depending on an operator's configuration, carries approximately 140 to 200 passengers in a single aisle, 6 abreast configuration. On flights exceeding 8 hours, that narrow cabin becomes a competitive weakness. Passengers feel more cramped, airlines operating transatlantic premium services lose the twin-aisle experience that business travelers expect. This is the gap that Boeing 797 was designed to fill, a composite fuselage, twin-aisle aircraft with an ovoid cross-section. Using 787 Dreamliner manufacturing technology scaled down to mid-market economics, the concept was refined as early as 2017. The NMA was cancelled. What Airbus built incrementally with the A321 XLR, Boeing intended to leapfrog with clean sheet engineering. But then, the 737 MAX crisis consumed the company entirely. 2 fatal crashes in 2018 and 2019 killed 346 people. The worldwide grounding that followed didn't just halt MAX deliveries, it forced Boeing to redirect engineering resources away from new aircraft development toward fixing existing problems. CEO David Calhoun put the NMA on indefinite hold in January 2020. The official language spoke of clean sheet reevaluation. The practical reality was simpler. Boeing couldn't simultaneously fix the MAX, certify the 777X, manage supply chain chaos, and develop an entirely new aircraft program. Then came January 5th, 2024, an Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 9 experienced a door plug blowout at 16,000 feet. Investigations revealed the aircraft had left Boeing's Renton factory with missing bolts. The FAA imposed a production cap of 38 aircraft per month, which has now risen to 42. Boeing's cash flow, already strained, tightened further. Kelly Ortberg became CEO in August 2024. A roughly 8-week machinist strike followed in September, ultimately resulting in a contract that increased wages. The strike settlement contained one clause with enormous strategic implications. Boeing's next new airplane, whether 797 or 737 replacement, must be built in the Puget Sound region. That single provision anchors the most important aircraft decision of the century to a specific geography, workforce, and cost structure. By late 2025, Boeing's position was stark. The 737 MAX 7 and MAX 10 still awaited certification, now expected in 2026. The 777X had slipped again, with first delivery now anticipated in 2027, and pre-tax charges exceeding $15 billion. Boeing was simultaneously drowning in demand and starving of capacity. But here's where this entire story takes a big unexpected turn. The significance of the 797 decision isn't about filling a product gap, and it isn't really about competing with the A321 XLR. It's about what Boeing's choice between 2 fundamentally different aircraft programs reveals about the future architecture of commercial aviation itself. Boeing faces a strategic fork that the industry hasn't fully grasped. Path 1 is the NMA, the 797, a 225 to 275-seat, twin-aisle composite aircraft with a range of approximately 8,300 to 9,300 kilometers. This airplane targets the middle of the market gap directly. It replaces aging 757s and 767s. It opens what the industry calls long, thin routes, city pairs with enough demand for daily service, but not enough to fill a 787 or A330. Think secondary European cities to mid-tier American cities, routes that today require connecting through hubs. Path 2 is the FSA, the Future Single Aisle, a clean sheet replacement for the 737 MAX itself. This targets the largest segment in all of commercial aviation, the narrow-body market, that accounts for roughly 70% of all commercial aircraft sales. An FSA would carry 180 to 210 passengers using 787 composite technology and next-generation engines, delivering a generational leap in efficiency over the 737 MAX. You see, Boeing can't afford to do both simultaneously. Development costs for either program could exceed $20 billion. Boeing's total debt stands at approximately $54 billion. The cruel mathematics are this: if Boeing builds the 797 first, it captures the mid-market, but leaves the 737 MAX competing against increasingly efficient Airbus A320neo variants for another 15 to 20 years. The Airbus A320neo family has already surpassed the 737 in total deliveries. If Boeing builds the FSA first, it protects its narrow-body franchise, the single most important revenue stream in commercial aviation, but surrenders the mid-market entirely to Airbus and its A321 XLR. Either path carries existential risk. Neither can be reversed once committed. And there's a constraint that makes both paths even more treacherous. Neither airplane has an engine. Boeing leadership, specifically former CEO Calhoun, has repeatedly stated they will not launch a new aircraft without propulsion technology that delivers at least a 20 to 30% improvement in fuel efficiency over current engines. CFM International is developing the RISE program, an open fan architecture that promises 20% better fuel efficiency than the LEAP engines powering today's 737 MAX and A320neo. But RISE isn't expected to be service-ready until the mid-2030s. Rolls-Royce UltraFan Demonstrator has shown 25% efficiency gains, and Rolls-Royce wants to get back into the narrow-body market. No manufacturer currently offers a production engine with next-generation efficiency. This creates a paradox that Ortberg himself articulated with unusual candor in an interview with Aviation Week. When is the market ready? When is the technology ready? When are we ready? Right now, they all have a thumbs down. 3 separate gates, all closed simultaneously. Boeing cannot will any of them open. Yet, airlines cannot afford Boeing's timeline. Every order an airline places for an A321 XLR today is a route that the 797 was supposed to serve. Every year Boeing delays, Airbus accumulates operational experience, customer loyalty, and production learning curves that become increasingly difficult to overcome. The A321 XLR doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be available. And it is. The aviation industry has always measured competitive advantage in orders, deliveries, and market share. Boeing's challenge requires a completely different metric: credibility. Boeing must demonstrate it can design, certify, and deliver a new aircraft on time, on budget, and without the quality failures that have defined the past 6 years. The Spirit Aerosystems reacquisition for $8.3 billion, including its debt, represents an attempt to rebuild manufacturing control. The FAA's recent restoration of Boeing's inspection authority signals regulatory trust slowly returning. Production targets of 47 737s per month by mid-2026 would demonstrate operational stability, but none of these milestones constitute a new airplane. The 797 decision doesn't replace the hub-and-spoke model. Airbus won't disappear. The A321 XLR won't be grounded. Airlines operating 757s and 767s will continue looking for interim solutions. But what Boeing decides, and more critically, when Boeing decides, will determine whether the middle of the market belongs to a purpose-built twin-aisle aircraft or an extended narrowbody for the next decades. It'll determine whether Boeing remains a company that defines aviation categories or one that responds to categories Airbus has already claimed. The engines don't exist yet. The aircraft doesn't exist yet. When Boeing's board eventually commits, whether in 2026 or beyond, the announcement will represent more than a product launch. It'll represent proof that a company buried under $54 billion in debt reeling from fatal accidents, production crises, and workforce upheaval, can still do the one thing that justified its existence for over a century: build something genuinely new. One Boeing decision can change how the world thinks about Boeing. The question isn't whether the 797 can redefine mid-market aviation, it's whether Boeing is really ready to find out. Hey, before you go, the YouTube algorithm thinks you're going to like this video next, so why not check it out?